So, Richard, as you say, we've both got a deep and abiding interest in learning of all sorts, and particularly in relation to action learning. Where did this start from you? Where did action learning come from?
Well, I guess my interest in action learning is something that has evolved, throughout my career, really. I started off in the world of training and development, really, and then became more interested in, how learning is actually something different to training. My first job actually ever was working in prisons in Kent. And, I was trying to help prisoners pre-release, actually prepare for employment. And we had a very successful project with a charity called Apex Trust, under the guidance of our chair was Baroness Sear back then. And I guess what I learned then was the difference between teaching and learning. The fact that I could go in with an objective to try and teach people something, whether they actually wanted to learn was another matter. And in fact, looking back on it, I guess what I noticed was the power of social learning. So a lot of these inmates in the prisons and the Borstals were clearly good learners, but often their learning, was social, and it was learning, from each other. I guess my objective was...
That's a very specific issue, and it's one that we haven't time to explore here now, but I imagine that's a quite unique environment as a learning environment.
Well, sure. And then I guess my view on it now, looking back sort of 30 years later and actually talking to, some of the prison governors is, that social learning is occurring anyway amongst prisoners and between prisoners. And if we can channel that in a positive way, and between staff as well, for them to be able to use a kind of social approach to learning, learning with and from each other around real challenges and problems, which is essentially what action learning is. It kind of makes sense now, looking back on it, looking back on that experience. So, I'd say, that's where it started in terms of my interest in training. And I realized that I couldn't, just turn up and assume that, as a 20-something, fresh graduate, that, prisoners were going to necessarily, want to hear what I had to tell them.
Well, and I suppose, and again, this is taking us into an interesting area already, it's a closed community of learners.
Yeah, absolutely. And, what I was presented with was a classroom of people who, I assumed in my naivety all wanted to be there. And then I realized that some, clearly were there under pressure. Some were genuine learners, keen to learn and to get the support. And some were kind of playing a game, really, of sort of let's sort of show willing. So it's kind of a good apprenticeship for me in the world of training and development. It wasn't what I planned, when I'd left the personnel management course as it was then. My intention was to go straight into industry, but that led me into industry. It gave me a good stepping stone and an apprenticeship, really, to go into industry.